Hello and welcome back to another episode of the On the Sideline podcast with Jackson and Kyle. I'm joined here, as always, by the biggest pleasant surprise of 2020 joining this podcast. Kyle, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. I made a sandwich today for lunch, and I determined my ultimate sandwich power rankings. My top 3 sandwiches, and there's no debate, are number 1, the classic New York pastrami. Okay. Number 2 is a roast beef and horseradish. And then number 3 is the classic meatball sub. There's nothing beating those 3.
Yeah, I got to be honest. I would say I might eat the pastrami out of those 3 things. Not a meatball guy, and I can't stand horseradish. So I would not go to your deli, Kyle.
Well, that's only minorly disappointing because those are the best 3. There's no comparison.
Yeah, Kyle and I both worked at a deli at one point.
Yeah, I did.
Not at the same time, but
no, I worked at 3 delis. Yeah.
Okay. I only worked at 2, so I've worked at like every sandwich shop. I've worked at Subway. I've worked at does that count as a deli? Like the Subway count as a deli?
I think it is I think I counted as a deli. Did you have to slice the meat there or?
No, it came pre-sliced.
Oh, then that's probably not. Sorry.
Yes. Charlie calls us Deli Kings in the chat. That's fair. We are the official podcast of deli sandwiches.
Yeah, if someone wants to sponsor us, give us a shout out here.
Yes, exactly. So, all right, before everyone turns it off, let me explain what we're going to be doing here. We were going to do similar. If you watched last week, we did every team's biggest disappointment. We're doing the other side now. We're going to get a little more positive, talk about the pleasant surprise of every single team. So we're going to go down the list, very similar to last week. Also, we have this available on audio only now. So if you're someone who just likes to listen to podcasts, you don't want to watch it on YouTube, then you can just listen to the audio only file. It's the On the Sideline podcast. Anywhere you get your podcast, you can check that out. And also, Kyle, let them know where they can find us on Twitter before we get into this.
Yeah, make sure to follow us on Twitter. That's at Jackson Kruger. I am at by Kyle Grondin. That's Grondin at by Kyle Grondin on Twitter. And then make sure to follow our show for any updates or any new stuff that we need to put out. We'll also put out, a little teaser to each show and the recap if you want to put it on there, and the audio only stuff. That's at On the Sideline JK on Twitter, at On the Sideline JK for any podcast information.
Yeah. Also, just to be clear, someone with some questions in the chat. Someone's like, shouldn't be pleasant surprises for every team in 2021. No, we're doing the last year. So the 2020 season, which did creep into 2021, but that's what we're doing. Just so everyone's clear. Also, we should mention, I feel like just to get people excited for next week, we have the show where we're going to be next week. We're going to be starting our division rankings where we preview every single team. It'll be an 8-week series. We did it last year and it was a lot of fun. So looking forward to that, Kyle.
Yeah, I can't wait to go through all the divisions. Little spoiler, Texans fans are going to be mad at me. So
what?
Yeah.
Are you saying that my Super Bowl favorite might not be correct?
Yeah, I have a good feeling the Texans aren't going to make the playoffs.
Okay, well, Texans fans, get your pitchforks ready now. Let's talk about. We're going to get into every single team, and let's just start with the obvious one. It's the thumbnail. And also, just so you know how this works, I will be doing the NFC, Kyle doing the AFC, again, just like last week. And, I mean, the obvious answer here is Tom Brady, which it's amazing that Tom Brady at 40, this late in his career can still be a pleasant surprise. But I don't think anyone, when Tom Brady signed with Tampa Bay, thought, oh, he'll throw 40 touchdowns and win a Super Bowl immediately. I think a lot of the thought was, okay, well, he'll, maybe this could work out. Maybe next year, maybe things can work out. I did not expect this to happen, so I think I'm going to go Tom Brady.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair. I think a lot of it, especially as Brady has been essentially this preparation guy for his entire career, and that's been his big thing, is how meticulous he is with the offense and all that. Basically not having an offseason and jumping into this, I think that's the impressive part about this season. You clearly saw them start to figure it out as the season went along. Then he put up big numbers by the end of the year. Like you said, he ended up with 40 touchdowns. Terrific year for him, and obviously worked out for Tampa Bay. This doesn't always work. It's not always easy. We see it in the NBA from time to time where it seems like it's an easy path to say, oh, we'll just form these super teams. Like, yeah, sure, it works out for the Warriors. That's nice. But then there's also the examples of Dwight Howard, Kobe Bryant, and Steve Nash teaming up and that blowing up in their faces. There was a chance this could blow up in their face if Tom Brady, he's not the youngest guy anymore, as it's been clearly documented, and it worked out for them. They won the Super Bowl.
Yes. Would it be fair to say that this is the like biggest pleasant surprise of the season? Maybe like, like the tuna sub of this season. Just the best, just the greatest.
I mean, I guess because they won the Super Bowl, yeah, you got to say that. I mean, I have a guy in the AFC I think was the biggest surprise of the season, but I think you can debate the two definitely from last year for sure.
Yeah, and I guess it's also fair to say, like, he's Tom Brady. At this point, it's like, yeah, what can he do? All right, let's move on. Division rival. We're going to go division by division. The Saints are a tough one because a lot of their players who were good last year had been good in previous years and weren't really that surprising. So it's hard to really come up with somebody I felt like was a great, pleasant surprise. The one I came up with is Alvin Kamara, just because if you remember, at the end of 2019, he had gotten injured and he didn't look the same when he came back from injury. And there was a bit of questions, maybe like, has he lost a step? Turns out, no, he's just as good as he ever has been. So that's my biggest pleasant surprise. The Saints, there was a couple that were tough in the NFC. The Saints were one of them. But I do think that Kamara, like, he proved that he still is elite. And we've seen running backs kind of fall off a cliff. So I know it's not a great one, but that's what I came up with for the Saints.
Yeah, especially I think he was the one that before the season had the contract dispute as well, and it was like, oh, is Alvin Kamara worth paying? Can he hold up for an entire a contract for 3 or 4 years? Well, he held up just fine last year. We'll see throughout the contract if he holds up, but at the same time, he definitely was the worth the price based on last season. He was so important to that team, especially when Breeze, was struggling, when Breeze got hurt, Michael Thomas got hurt. He was so important to that team. I, at one point in the middle of the season, said he might be an MVP guy because he was just that important to that offense staying afloat.
But in fairness, was that point in the season, that was probably one of our Sunday night shows, right? Where we were throwing hot takes around left and right.
Yeah, exactly. So it's not quite as egregious as are the Arizona Cardinals the best team in the NFC, but it's up there for me. But, at the same time, I thought it was justified that, this guy is hugely important to his offense staying where it is right now and still being really good. And he was terrific last year.
Yeah, I agree. So let's go to the next team. Let's go Falcons. I'm going to go Calvin Ridley here. Ridley is someone we kept waiting to see. Is he going to take that next step? Because he had been good for the Falcons, but he was kind of like a good number 2 guy. And in fact, last year was the first year he proved no, he's a number 1 guy, and there's not really a question about it. Even when Julio went down, he got better. So getting him a lot of targets, he's able to thrive in that role. And without Julio Jones now, they still have a number 1 receiver.
Yeah, I mean, the Julio Jones trade doesn't happen if Calvin Ridley's not awesome last year, right?
It might still happen, but it makes it a lot easier when you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah. Him and Kyle Pitts are going to be fun to watch this next year, especially, they're going to have to make up some with Julio, but I still think that they're both pretty awesome players.
Yeah, and it's always kind of cool when you have a guy who it's like, okay, is he going to break out? Is he going to break out? And then he does break out. That doesn't always happen.
Yeah. No, definitely. I thought he was impressive last year, and, he was probably, I don't know, one of the 12 best receivers in the NFL, if not top 10.
Yeah, no, he was great last year. Let's round out the NFC South, Carolina Panthers. I'm going to go Robbie Anderson here. And Robbie Anderson was solid with the Jets, but I do feel like he took an additional jump going over to Carolina.
Yeah. No. And then, he had the funny video about Sir Purr. But regardless of that, I thought this was a team kind of desperate for a number 2 playmaker, especially with McCaffrey getting hurt. We knew who DJ Moore was. He's obviously awesome. And then they found this guy, Robbie Anderson, coming in. He got out of that Jets black hole and was able to come in here. And I thought he looked really good as a number 2 guy.
Yeah, he is the one of the many players who, after leaving Adam Gase, has been much more impressive after that.
Yeah. No, I was a big fan of his last season. He was kind of one of those guys that went under the radar.
Yeah. All right. So that's it for the NFC South. It was, definitely one I think rose above the rest in that division, but still a lot of good stuff. Green Bay Packers. This is another one in the argument for the tuna sandwich of this video of Aaron Rodgers. Definitely a pleasant surprise. We won the MVP when after last season, it was a disappointing season. So I feel like it's got to be Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, I mean, they drafted a quarterback with the sole intention that they're not sure how many years Aaron Rodgers has left. And then
Hmm.
he goes out and looks like the best, he's the best quarterback in football. He's the best player in football for a season. So, yeah, this one feels very, very obvious to me. This is another team where it's like everybody on this team that is pretty good, anyways. It's not really like you can pick like a, a random guy and say, oh, this was surprising. They have a lot of really good players on this team.
Yeah, like, oh, Devontae Adams, I think now instead of a number like the seventh best receiver, I think he's like the fourth best receiver. Like, that's not really that big of a jump.
Oh yeah, no. So
Mhm.
exactly, it was just like I definitely think that's fair though because we were talking about had he lost a step over his past 2 seasons before this, and then he goes out and wins an MVP.
Yeah, exactly. All right, moving on. We have the Chicago Bears. For the Bears here, again, not a ton that was crazy, but David Montgomery was good last year. And David Montgomery, who was the fantasy football darling when he first got drafted and didn't have like an amazing rookie season, but did play well in his second year.
Yeah, this was definitely a guy that I had made fun of a few times too. So him coming
Mhm.
alive and kind of figuring things out as it goes on, it was an impressive year from him. And there wasn't a lot of impressive about this Bears offense. So him being able to get it done and make some plays, that's promising for this team that needs playmakers desperately.
Yeah, it's funny how the Bears have had such a hard time getting an offense together, but I feel like they do a good job of getting running backs. They had like Jordan Howard for those few years, who was great. Obviously, Matt Forte back in the day. Like the running back isn't really especially, I'm only talking recent memory, but recent memory when their offenses have pretty much always been horrible. Running back hasn't been the issue.
Yeah, no, it really hasn't. So they got a good one there, and obviously he put together a good year for them. So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah. All right. Minnesota. I mean, there's only really one guy you can go with right here. It's their late first round pick, ending up with 1,400 receiving yards, Justin Jefferson. So amazingly, my biggest disappointment and biggest pleasant surprise for the Vikings were both of their first round picks. Gladney was my biggest disappointment. Jefferson, I mean, again, you come into the league, he was, I believe, the fifth receiver taken and ends up looking like the best at 1,400 yards. Like, there's a real chance that, like, I don't know, look at like a Jamar Chase and a Jalen Waddle, guys selected 5 and 6. There's a very, like, if you would have to bet, would it ever have a 1,400-yard season? It'd be hard to bet yes, just on anybody. And those are great prospects. Like, to come in right out of the gate and have a 1,400-yard season, that's incredible.
Yeah, one of the things when I was doing the AFC side was I tried to avoid rookies, but I thought there were just so many good rookies that were so impressive to see. And obviously, he was the one that, you could probably debate he was the best rookie in the league last year. I think there's a handful of guys you could debate for that, and he was clearly one of them. They trade Stephon Diggs, and they're like, oh, this is a huge problem now for Minnesota, not having this number 2 guy. Well, it worked out just fine for them because they got equally, you could say Diggs was terrific last year. And the craziest thing about it was, as good as Diggs was, they almost got equally as good a receiver to replace him in the first
Yeah.
round. So it's just crazy to get that sort of production this quickly.
It's one of those wild things. Like, sometimes trades do help both teams, but rarely do trades help both teams when it's like the same position going, to different teams. And then they,
Right.
like, I feel like Jefferson's better in the Vikings offense, and I feel like Diggs is better in the Bills offense. Like, it just worked out perfectly that way.
Yeah. No, it definitely did. And, it was a great year for Jefferson and for the Vikings offense even.
Yeah. We have the Detroit Lions. Detroit Lions. I know what everyone's saying. Like, how do you, how do you narrow it down? Basically, the entire team was so impressive last year. But there was one guy who was like, he went from, we've talked about this position in tight ends sort of sometimes take a year to develop. Well, that is very true with TJ Hawkinson, who we were waiting on him to develop going into his second season, and he looked like he could be an elite tight end last year. He was awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he definitely panned out as far as a prospect goes based on last year's production, and he's going to be a nice piece for Jared Goff. He's had some decent tight ends in Los Angeles with the Rams, and now he's got a really good one to work with this season.
Yeah, it cut out for a second, but I heard what you said. So okay, cool. Yeah. I mean, it was good by Hawkinson. We can move on to next division now. The NFC East, everyone's favorite division, the one that we watch the most because we're forced to. Let's stick with teams that didn't have a lot. I struggled with Philadelphia. I did not have an easy time coming up with a pleasant surprise for the Philadelphia Eagles. A lot of disappointments here. I'm going to go Jalen Hurts. And even Hurts, I wasn't like stunned by his play. I remember I was kind of high on him going into the season, so I think we both were. And he kind of, I think, met our expectations. But there's literally nothing else. I have no other option. I have to go with Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, I mean, so you weren't a fan of Travis Fulgham's season?
I mean, he had like a few good games, and then he kind of, I guess you could say him, but I mean, like I was a fan of his first like 4 games.
I mean, that's the thing is like I felt like the problem was they weren't giving Fulgham the ball rather than Fulgham was bad or cooled off or anything. But yeah, I mean, Hurts is definitely, there's enough there that you're like, maybe we can build around this, and I think that's fair. So it'll be interesting to see how he develops. I think he's still got a lot to work on. And, it was pretty clear that when he got drafted, and one of the things that was the knock on him is that he's got a lot to refine in his game. Not that he has great playmaking ability, but there's a lot to refine there as a quarterback. And I think you saw flashes of the playmaking ability, but also saw the issues with, okay, there's definitely holes here and here with his game and with his throwing.
Yeah, I agree. And there was there were some consistency things where you catch him in the right drive and he looks awesome, but you catch him in the wrong drive, it doesn't work out so well. But again, kind of what I talk about with the Eagles, it's one of those teams where it's like, how do you look good in that offense when no one's getting open? And that's kind of why I have a hard time putting Travis Fulgham in here, because it's not, I think Pro Football Focus graded him as the worst receiving group last year. When no one's getting open, it's hard for any quarterback to look good, which is also why I think we're both a little bit like, let's not necessarily write off Carson Wentz completely just yet.
Yeah, no, I agree. So it'll be interesting to see. I mean, the Eagles got a long way to go to me. So it'll be interesting to see how they can, put a good offense around Hurts this next year.
Yeah, exactly. We'll go to the Dallas Cowboys. This is a team that the couple places that could have gone. You talk about not wanting to do rookies. This is the only other rookie I have on this list. I'm going to go CeeDee Lamb. He was your guy he was one of your guys in the draft, and he looked really good. I mean, he was probably the second, at least in the conversation for the second best receiver. Obviously Jefferson has the breakout year. He's easy number 1. But you could argue CeeDee Lamb, and CeeDee Lamb looks like he could be a true number 1 guy.
Yeah, I mean, he is obviously going to be in the league a long time. There's just only the one thing that went against him basically was there's only so many touches that Dallas Cowboys offense can have, because they got to get Zeke involved. They got to get the running game involved. Obviously the injuries also hurt, but then there's so many receivers, but he was able to make his presence known. I thought he was really good last year.
Yeah, I agree. And again, I thought about Dak for a second, but I just felt Dak didn't play long enough to really count it too much.
Yeah, I think that's fair. He, 4.5 games, it doesn't do it for me.
Yeah. Let's go to the Giants. The Giants, I'm going to go with, I for a second just thought about doing their whole defense, but I didn't realize this is a surprising stat. In terms of points per drive, their defense was just 15th. Like, I would have guessed they were top 10 defense.
Huh. Yeah, that is interesting. I thought they were really, I mean, they probably benefited from playing in the NFC East, honestly, but at the same time, it was a very good defense, especially, in the front four with Leonard Williams, and the back, James Bradbury is obviously awesome. So that was pretty impressive. Yeah.
And I think also, they got better down the stretch too. So that might be why that we have that perception. But you mentioned my guy. I'm going Leonard Williams. I mean, Leonard Williams had, I believe it was 17 sacks in his first 5 seasons. He then breaks out last year with 11.5 sacks. I mean, he looked like a bust. The Jets basically just gave up on him so he could, he didn't even have to move when he gets traded. And then he ends up having a really good, double-digit sack, gets a big payday for the Giants. That's a breakout season and a pleasant surprise in my book.
Yeah, he certainly needed that in the contract year, and now it's going to see what happens as he got the contract and how this works for the Giants. He was obviously awesome last year, and obviously, was a big part of that defense really, like you said, in the second half of the year, coming alive and looking like the real deal.
Yeah, exactly. So again, when you can find stuff like that, when you can find a Leonard Williams, like that's how you turn a good team into a great team, right? We saw the Tampa Bay with Shaq Barrett, finding someone who is kind of a write-off and turning him into a great player, like that's huge.
Yeah, and for the Giants last year, it turned a horrible team into an average team. So
being a bit generous with average, I think.
Okay, fair. Yeah,
I mean they did win. They won 6 games in the worst division in football. Like I don't want to go too crazy. They beat the Seahawks though.
They had a few good wins. They were in the conversation. Yeah, it was because they were in the NFC East.
Okay, fair enough. The Giants fans will come at me. Yeah, they were fine. I don't know why I'm being. They were actually slightly below average, Kyle. How dare you? No. All right, let's move on. Let's talk some balls. The Washington football team. I'm going Ron Rivera. Again, I thought about going this just with their whole defense as well, but I feel like Ron Rivera, he was good 2 years ago in his last year with the Carolina Panthers, I thought, or he had been good with the Panthers for a while. But, there were some issues. When you get fired, it's kind of like, okay, do you really want to, I think the common saying is like when people talk about a coach getting, should they fire this coach? People will say, well, a bunch of teams would pick that guy up. And that's actually what happened with Washington, and they're very happy. So Ron Rivera, we thought would be good, but he ended up being really good.
Yeah, I think, outside of like the Browns, I felt like of the last 20 years, no team needed more of a cultural reset than Washington. And I felt like the Balls actually kind of got that, especially with everything going on behind them. He kind of just was able to focus on football. And the product on the field was, I don't want to over exaggerate it like the Giants thing, but, it was solid. They were in conversation, and they probably were a little better than what their record hold. And that they're probably going to, they might be the favorite again for the NFC East because of that culture.
Yeah, well, I think what was really impressive about the way it worked was that they were still able to go 7-9 with disastrous quarterback play the whole season, which you could argue about the Giants, but I wouldn't say the Giants had disastrous quarterback play. They just had below average quarterback play. Dwayne Haskins started like a good amount of games for this team. They had 4 different quarterbacks start for him, and they were still able to, win 7 games. And they, again, in the playoffs, they held their own against the team that went on to win the Super Bowl.
Yeah, no, I agree. So it'll be interesting to see how this team, can get better this next season, obviously, with maybe stable quarterback play.
Yeah. All right. We will move off. Yeah, it's okay. I forgive you. We will move off of everyone's favorite division. I'm sorry. No more NFC East talk. Very sad. We will go with the Rams. So I thought about going with a couple teams and saying they're just their defense. The Rams, I'm just going to go their defense because they went from 13th best to the best defense in football, which was a surprise for me. I thought their defense could be good. I didn't expect it to be as good as it did. If I had to pick one player, I'd pick Darius Williams. But I do think that, as a whole, just their defense in general playing as well as it did.
Yeah, I mean, this was a defense that kind of was thought of, Aaron Donald. There was good players on this team, but a lot of it felt like, revolved around Donald. But then you saw a lot of the guys that really stepped up and contributed this year. Ramsey really stepped back into his role as the elite guy at corner. Guys like James Johnson and Troy Hill had great years and then got big contracts off it. Like you said, with Darius Williams was very good. Leonard Floyd, I think, was really good. And, there was a lot of guys across this roster that really performed and looked really terrific.
Yeah, and exactly. And I think Ramsey's another guy you could mention here of, when he got traded for 2 first-round picks, people were saying, what are the Rams doing? Well, this is what they were doing. They were turning their mediocre defense into the best in football, obviously, and then Darius Williams coming in as well with that 1-2 punch with their sort of fun quarters coverage thing they do. It's almost like a cover 3, but it's quarters. Very interesting stuff. I almost thought about Brandon Staley as well, but I tried to go with, I didn't do this for every team, but there's one team I didn't. But for the most part, I went with guys who are still on that team.
Yeah, I tried to as well. I think one team I have an option for a guy who's no longer on the team.
Yeah, well, we'll move on to the Cardinals, who not only am I not going with someone who isn't on the Cardinals, I'm going with someone who is never on the Cardinals. Bill O'Brien is the Cardinals' biggest pleasant surprise of the 2020 season.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I mean, gift wrapping DeAndre Hopkins, that definitely helps. And taking back David Johnson also helps. So,
yeah,
the double win for the Cardinals there. This is just going to be talked about for years as just an awful trade.
Yeah, that's a good point. I wonder how, like 10 years from now, around where do you think this goes in someone's top 10 worst trades ever blog?
Probably pretty high.
Yeah, it's obviously not like Herschel Walker, but it's got to be up there. It might be top 5.
Yeah, if you go on cross-board, I mean, this just kind of feels like a James Harden trade, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it feels, well, a little bit. So, I mean, are we talking to James Harden when he went to the Rockets?
Both.
I guess so. Yeah. Well, I mean, because when he went to the Rockets, there was kind of he was a promising player. Like Hopkins was already established. Most people considered him the best receiver in football before this season, and he gets traded for an early 2nd-round pick.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Yeah, I mean, it was surprising when it happened. It was it's still surprising. And yeah, he was really good last season. So yeah, Bill O'Brien was the key to the Cardinals.
Yeah, and again, it's like it was a real thing for the Cardinals last year where they would just be like, okay, nothing's working. Let's just have Hopkins run deep. It'll be double coverage. Kyler will throw a good ball, and he'll find a way to make the catch.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, it kind of turned into that situation. So yeah, completely agree. A couple guys on their defense also did pretty well. So you got to give them props. I think Hassan Reddick was someone who really another contract year guy who did leave. But he had a good year. But yeah, I mean, the value of adding Hopkins at that price is just unbeatable.
Yeah, exactly. We'll go to the next team. I'm going to go for 49ers. A couple guys I could go with. I thought about Brandon Ayuk because he was really good, even though I was high on him coming out of his draft. But I do think he exceeded even my expectations. However, I'm going to go Trent Williams. I mean, we hadn't seen Trent Williams in a bit, and he didn't look as dominant as we had seen him in the past. He is a contract year guy, and he got a contract, but he was maybe the best tackle in football last year. I think Pro Football Focus has him rated as the best tackle in football. So to do that, again, a guy who they didn't get a ton of value for, obviously, or didn't give up a ton of value for, it made sense just given the, whole situation with him in Washington. But Trent Williams was really good last year.
Yeah. Yeah, he really was. He did a really good job for them. And it was surprising, I think, because, it just feels really hard to not, like, of all the sports to, like, take a break from and then come back, football definitely feels like the hardest sport, right? Just because of the physicality and how, like, good a shape you have to be in. And then he was able to kind of take that time off, come back, and just be, a Pro Bowler again, basically. It was really impressive.
Yeah. Maybe ping pong.
Really? You think so? I don't know.
It's so, like, I feel like when you're going that quickly, it's just all muscle memory at that point.
So then wouldn't, like, racing then be in that conversation?
Well, is racing a big, like, reflexes thing? I feel like it's like the reflexes and, like, you have to move quickly.
Yeah, that's fair. A lot of going back and forth. So I think that's completely fair. But yeah, I think football is up there just because I just feel like football's a whole different, like, in shape than, like, other sports, because you can be big, but football player big is a whole different conversation.
Yeah. Curling?
No, I don't think so. I think that's pretty easy to pick back up.
I think, well, my thought is, like, the brushing part. Like, that's kind of muscles you don't really use that much. Or maybe I just need to clean my house more.
The brushing part is probably the easiest part. The guy tossing it and having to get the touch on it, I think that's the difficult part.
Yeah, I guess you're right. I guess
I've only curled twice, so
okay, twice more than I bet most of us have. I just feel like, when you're brushing, like maybe it's true. It's like the thrower. You can live with some bad brushers. You need a good chucker.
Yeah, basically. So
yeah, all right. Next week we will be doing all curling, but until then, we're going to stick with this. Get back on track. We're off the rails a bit. Last team in the NFC before it's Kyle's turn. Seattle Seahawks. I'm going to go DK Metcalf. DK Metcalf was a really good rookie had a really good rookie season, but I do feel like he elevated his game to the this next year. Had a really good second year. He went from a 900-yard receiver to a 1,300-yard receiver. So he's showing potential that he could be, like, not just a number one receiver, but maybe like an elite receiver. He has the potential for a top 5 receiver, which I didn't really necessarily see his first year. So he's going to be my pleasant surprise for them.
Yeah, I mean, he was really awesome last year. I think there's some people ready to jump the gun and put him in the, put him in the top 5, which I think is a little over exaggerating right now. But he was terrific last year. And obviously, we knew about his athleticism, but it really showed on the field. And I think just his ability to kind of dominate games at points was really important. And, he was terrific for that team, and they have a really good receiver duo.
Yeah, exactly. And again, I talk about the importance of receivers. So getting a second receiver really helps. Why don't you go ahead now? So that's it for the NFC. I almost sneezed, but I didn't. I hope you guys are proud of me. Let's go to the AFC now. And just so I can help with my formatting, how are you doing this division-wise?
Well, you went South, North, East, West, so I guess I will stick to the same. So I'll start with the AFC South here, beginning with the Indianapolis Colts. I'm going with Xavier Rhodes here. This one felt pretty easy for me because, based on his last 2 years of production, it was pretty easy to write him out of the league. And then he just turns back into one of the better corners in the NFL. really helping this defense elevate to a new level because it was one of the best defense in the league. And I felt like having a guy like him perform really well was important.
Yeah. Also, Charlie Moynihan says the only curling I do is at the gym. Moynihan, or maybe our most jacked listener, perhaps.
Perhaps maybe our only Jack listener, honestly.
Yeah. So no, Xavier Rhodes is the perfect. I'm getting distracted by too many things right now. Xavier Rhodes is the perfect choice for this list, right? Someone who we all thought was going to be washed job. I think even when he got signed, it's like, really? That's what you're going to do? And no, he was like, it kind of goes to show. It's like, hey, sometimes getting an older corner and turning him into his own corner can work wonders. And that's what happened with Indianapolis.
Yeah. I thought he did a terrific job for that team. And so, I mean, that felt like a fairly easy one to me. This one also felt easy. I tried not to do rookies. I ended up picking 6 rookies, but I only picked one high early round rookie with my picks because I just felt like I didn't want to do too much of that. This one, though, was James Robinson, who was one of the best running backs in the league in his first year as an undrafted guy. I thought he was really good for Jacksonville, really important for that team. And I mean, just another weapon for that offense that looks like it's going to be pretty good next year.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. I didn't make any effort to not pick rookies, and I only picked 2. And you made an effort to not do it. Maybe they're just more impressive rookies in the AFC this year. Robinson is again another guy. It's like you got to put him on this list. I mean, no one said, you know who I like, this James Robinson guy. I don't even think I think even his parents were like, hopefully he can just find a way to get into the league. I don't think anyone expected him to come into the league and be a legitimately awesome halfback. Granted, Jacksonville is kind of moved on from him after 1 year, at least somewhat with the ETN thing. But I don't think that they're going to completely move on from him. I think they just want 2 backs because he was really good, and at times great for Jacksonville.
Yeah, I mean, I disagreed with the pick because second running back I feel like isn't that important. But, having 2 running backs is kind of a thing in the NFL nowadays. I think he's going to be able to maximize his production this season. And I think that James Robinson, like I said, is going to be important still for the Jaguars going forward after a really good first year. Houston Texans. We already had one Texan on this list with Bill O'Brien for the Cardinals. I went with Brandon Cooks. This is kind of a guy who, was a very good receiver for a number of years. And he had a great year. He had over 1,000 yards receiving. And the most important thing for him is he stayed relatively healthy. He was able to stay on the field this past season and be a consistent option for Deshaun Watson. I thought Brandon Cooks put together a very good year for Houston when there wasn't a whole lot of pleasant surprises for this team.
Yeah, I think it says something that their pleasant surprise is a pleasant surprise because he had his 3rd best year as a pro. I think in terms of receiving yards, I think that kind of goes to show something about Houston. This was a tough one for you.
Yeah, I mean that one definitely wasn't easy. There's a reason that people aren't really looking forward to the Texans next season. But hey, Cooks put together some numbers. It'll be interesting to see what happens with that team next year, and if he can continue to be a consistent option for them.
Yeah, is Brandon Cooks the worst pleasant surprise on his list? And again, he's a good player, but is in terms of everyone else, does he end up being the least surprising pleasant surprise on this list?
I would say so. Yeah, I mean, yeah.
What kind of sandwich is Brandon Cooks?
What kind of sandwich?
Yes.
He's like an Italian. He's steady. If you go to a place and order Italian, you're at least getting a solid sandwich. And then there's occasionally you go to a place with a great Italian sub that'll blow you away.
That's amazing. That was like a perfect analogy. You just came up on the spot. That's good. I'm going to steal that. All right. Let's go to last one in this division, Tennessee Titans.
Tennessee Titans. This is a guy who is no longer on the team, so I tried to avoid this, but I ended up
Isaiah Wilson
here. No, not Isaiah Wilson. Your MVP candidate did not work out for this one. I ended up going with Corey Davis. It was his best year. It was a contract year. They really needed him to step up this season, and he did. I almost put Jonnu Smith too, who's another guy who isn't on the team anymore. But yeah, Corey Davis in a contract year, stepping up as that number 2 guy.
Yeah, I mean it's pretty good. Like I'm trying to think who would I pick if I had to pick someone still on the team, and the issue with them is pretty much everyone who was good last year. Like we've seen them be good before, so I think this is a good choice because Corey Davis was again another guy who drafted super high. I believe it was 5th overall. It was at least top 10, and kind of had been kind of but at least now he's turned into like a 1,000-yard guy that has a lot of value. And again, I've noticed a few guys during contract years having pleasant, surprising seasons.
Yeah, that's kind of a trend. So we'll see what happens with Corey Davis going forward, especially being on the Jets. And so, yeah, I mean, that's my list for the AFC South. You want to move on to the AFC North?
Yeah, sure. So, the Jets, they get their, finally that Robbie Anderson type they've been looking for quite some time.
Yeah, honestly. So heading to the AFC North, we got the Cincinnati Bengals here. I went with Jesse Bates III. He was always a good safety, but no one expected him to be Pro Football Focus's top-ranked safety, right? I mean, that was something that was incredible. He had 3 more forced incompletions than anybody else in the league. He had just had a great year in coverage against the run, too. I thought he was a really good safety for them. And like I said, was PFF's number 1 ranked safety, which is something, we all thought he was good, but seeing him as the number 1 ranked guy was surprising to me.
Yeah, he's one of those guys. There's a few like safeties around the league that's like really good. Like I think like Justin Reed's another guy. There's a few guys that just like not on a great team, but they're really good and they should get talked about more. But they probably just they're not going to just given. I think there's a few like for whatever reason safety seems to be that position where there's a lot of like great players that just no one even has heard of.
Well, I feel like safety is a really deep position too, so we pay attention to the guys on really good teams that maybe a guy like Bates goes under the radar.
Right. Yeah, that's true. You could also have gone with Joe Burrow here, who, again, rookie, you're trying to avoid rookie, and first overall. So I guess for your criteria, I get why you didn't. But, Burrow for a rookie quarterback was awesome.
Yeah, no, he definitely was. I almost just ended up going with him, but at the same time, like I said, Bates elevating himself into the elite safety category was probably something I didn't see coming. I thought he was just good, and I didn't know, especially with helping out this defense and Wayne's getting hurt. I thought this was a really good year for him.
Yeah, definitely. So, all right, you want to move on to the next team?
Yeah, so we got the Cleveland Browns here. There was a couple candidates I had that I was really considering. But at the end of the day, I was just like, this team was way better just when Baker Mayfield was awesome. And having Baker Mayfield, under 10 interceptions this year, first time in his career, just do other things really well and, really seem comfortable in this offense for the first time in his career. Obviously, that helps when you have a good coach and that changes things. But just seeing comfortable in this offense, making the right reads, making the right plays, and then also, limiting his turnovers, which was the big thing through those first 2 years.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think this is a great one because Baker played like at least a top 15 quarterback last year. And, the year before, like he was maybe not even a top 32 quarterback. So that kind of a jump at the most important position of football, like that's just like you need something like that to happen if you're going to be a successful football team. You need at least a pretty good quarterback. And Baker was pretty good last year.
Yeah. And obviously he has the Browns fans excited as maybe one of the Super Bowl contenders out of the AFC. The Chiefs are obviously in the way, which is a big thing, but at the same time, I thought he was terrific. I also considered Rashard Higgins because I thought the offense was still really good when OBJ went out because he was pretty good. And then I also considered Malcolm Smith, who kind of came out of nowhere and had a big year for them.
Yeah, well, not completely out of nowhere. What, former Super Bowl MVP Malcolm Smith?
Well, fair. Just, a good year.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's still true. As weird as that sounds, as weird as that sentence sounds, it is still a true fact. But yeah, I mean, Kyle, are you surprised that Baker Mayfield was able to have success despite the fact that he appeared in commercials?
You know what? Not dedicating his whole offseason to training 24/7 and being able to do that is surprising. Next thing you know, he's going to be on Jeopardy for, part of his offseason. I was not surprised that was not holding him back from being good.
Yeah, exactly. It's crazy how Brady has never taken a day off in his entire life.
Yeah, I know. So we'll move on to the next team. Similar to what you said about the Saints, where it's like, oh, the good players were good, so it's kind of hard. The Baltimore Ravens had a lot of the similar issues for me because there's just, we knew these guys were good. We knew a lot of these players were good. I ended up just going with Tyus Bowser. I mean, he was a guy who, he was solid for this team, but nothing really like great, I guess I'd say. I thought he was really good last year. And for a year before where I think he had 5 sacks the year before, he showed really good chops in coverage too. He showed really good as an all-around linebacker, and maybe they're okay with losing guys like Ngakoue and Judon because a guy like Bowser's there and looks pretty good.
Yeah, yeah. I agree. I think he's good, and he had a pick six against Baker Mayfield. That was fun, and the best game of the year last year, probably.
Yeah, yeah. Like I said, it was really hard to pick anyone for the Ravens just because a lot of their players we already know are good. It's not like it's a surprise that like Jimmy Smith's good or anybody on that Ravens team.
Right.
So
Oh, Marlon Humphrey had another great year. Okay.
yeah,
Wow.
exactly. So
Yeah.
we can move on from that one. Yeah, so Tyus Bowser for me for the Ravens. The Steelers had the same exact thing for me, which made it really annoying picking these teams back to back. So this is one I ended up going with a rookie for this one too, and that's Alex Highsmith. I thought he had a pretty
Yeah.
good year for them. And there wasn't a huge amount of surprise for this Ravens or the Steelers team because, like I said, a lot of these guys on this defense were already pretty good. Deontay Johnson was already pretty good. So it was just like, hey, Highsmith came in and he's just another piece of this defense, which is almost unfair.
Yeah, no, I agree. Highsmith was awesome. Again, the Steelers, they draft well. I mean, they're just a team that they always it seems like every year they're adding like 3 or 4 players who are just like starting guys. The other guy you could have gone with is maybe like Chase Claypool, another guy who's a second round pick who was really good.
Yeah, I thought they were both really productive for this team, and it'll be interesting to see how this team bounces back. But obviously, Highsmith, I think, is going to be important for this team for the next couple of seasons at least. He was really good for them.
Yeah, and it's always great, when you have a guy like that who, like, I think, the Steelers let Bud Dupree walk. I think a big part of it is because they feel confident in Highsmith to sort of fill that role.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, because now that, when you have that depth, you can kind of make those decisions and say, we don't want to pay a guy Bud Dupree's contract. That's just not what we're looking at.
Yeah, exactly. So, all right, 2 divisions left. Where are you going here?
All right, so we'll head to the AFC East. This was probably the easiest choice among both divisions, or both conferences, I think. The Buffalo Bills had an MVP candidate in Josh Allen.
Yeah.
There are some Bills fanatics who are saying, "Oh, we saw this all along." I continue to say nobody just sees a guy get 10% better completion percentage just from one year to another. Josh Allen was obviously terrific this year. He looked like an MVP candidate, and I mean, we did our quarterback rankings. I think he went from like 22 to like 5th. So
yeah,
that tells you everything you need to know about Josh Allen's leap last year.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. This might be the true, cream of the crop. This might be the sandwich you advertise. I don't know why I keep making sandwich comparisons here. But, with Josh Allen, I mean, really, well, for one thing, there were some Bills fans who could not believe anyone had any negative thing to say about him after 2 years. And apparently, like, I don't think they saw anything that we didn't. I think that's just sort of fandom. You hope that your quarterback is going to be great. And he was always a likable guy who we thought would be cool if it was great. You probably didn't because you're a Patriots fan and would like for the Bills to not have a superstar quarterback. But again, incredible season. When you go from maybe a bottom 5 quarterback to maybe a top 5 quarterback, that's a pleasant surprise.
Yeah, no doubt. Are the Bills being slept on this year? Because I feel like they almost are.
Maybe. We can talk about it more in the and once we get to the divisional rankings. But why do you feel like they're getting slept on? I feel like most people are talking about them as like a championship contender.
I just feel like we're already to anoint like the Browns, the Titans, the Colts as like the new AFC contenders. When this team was just in the AFC Championship and maybe was a pass rush away from being in the Super Bowl. I thought they were significantly worse than Kansas City, but at the same time, this team just looked like the best team in football, or at least one of the best teams in the AFC last year. And I feel like now we're ready to move on to the Browns and Titans.
Yeah, I guess so. I don't know. I feel like they're like, I guess so. I feel like they're still, I feel pretty good about them. I think they'll win 12, 13 games and, contend for the Super Bowl. I don't know if they're number 1.
Yeah, that's fair. I think they're going to be really good again next year. So, we can move on from that. We'll talk about that more, obviously, as we go through the divisional rankings. So we'll move on to the Miami Dolphins here. I went with another backup that kind of showed some really good stuff and, justified kind of, hey, we don't want to pay Kyle Van Noy this contract anymore. Okay, we'll cut him. Hey, we don't want to pay Shaq Lawson. We'll let him go. Andrew Van Ginkel was really good for the Dolphins, I thought, last season in a limited, I think a little more than a limited role. I thought he was just playing. He was a really important player for that defense. I thought he did some really good stuff. So Van Ginkel was my surprise for the Dolphins.
Yeah, interesting. Again, I do feel like they're well, my first thought with the Dolphins would be, what about Xavier Howard? I mean, I feel like he went from good to great this year.
Yeah, I mean that was a thing. Like I thought about that, and even like just that secondary as a whole. But I thought Howard was like, okay, this guy was already pretty good. I thought Van Ginkel was a guy. Like I said, they felt like they could let a few guys go because I thought they felt pretty comfortable with him as taking over that spot.
Interesting. Yeah. Looking up stuff about him, now he's not someone. He's kind of someone who I feel like has flown under the radar. I haven't heard much about him, to be honest. So I might need to look up more. Interesting hairstyle he has. Very straight blonde hair.
The only reason I really knew about him is because I was a fan of him at Wisconsin in college, and then completely different spots going from Wisconsin to Miami. But yeah. I mean, I thought he was really good for them last year, and I think he's going to be an important outside linebacker for them.
Yeah, I don't know why I feel this way, but he looks like someone who was born in Wisconsin but now lives in Miami. He just has that kind of look.
That's fair. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Great hair and, good outside linebacker game too. I'm a big fan of his. So
yeah,
that's
Pro Football Focus has him graded as the 12th out of the 108 edge guys on there. So that's pretty good. So I'll have to look. Good call by you. I'll have to look more into it. And then you're going to go Jets or Patriots here?
I'll stick with alphabetical. I'll go with the Jets here. This was hard. I went with Denzel Mims just because this was another one where I just felt like picking a rookie was fair. He didn't get touchdowns last year, but just watching him last year, I thought despite, having Adam Gase, having struggling quarterback options, having Frank Gore as his starting running back, I thought he looked pretty good. 15 yards per catch. Made some really nice plays, I thought. I hope he gets into the end zone this season, but I thought he was impressive, no doubt, as a receiver his rookie year.
Yeah. Denzel Mims is good. I don't have a huge issue with that. Again, I feel like Quinnen Williams has to be the guy, though, right?
Yeah, that's probably fair. I mean, I could go with that too. I can get behind that one. Yeah, you know what? You changed my mind on this one. Quinnen Williams definitely stepped up this past season.
Right. Okay. I'm glad because I was just thinking. I feel like this one because I remember with Williams, it was like, people kept talking about the Jets somehow managed to screw this up. People were saying Nick Bosa or Quinnen Williams, and after the first year, Bosa was awesome and Williams looked like a bust. Well, turns out he just did that defensive tackle thing that they sometimes do, where they have a bad rookie season and then are awesome their second year.
Yeah, that's fair. No, I thought he was really good for them last year, and I think him and Carl Lawson are going to be fun to watch this next year for the Jets. Yeah, I mean, so that's fair. I think Denzel Mims also is going to be an interesting option for the receiving core, but yeah, no doubt Quinnen Williams definitely made a leap in his second year. So yeah, I mean, that's what we have on the Jets. We can move on to the Patriots now. This one, Jacoby Myers definitely had some moments as a receiver and, led the team in receiving yards, I think, last season. So that was a really good year for him. I did pick a rookie for this one too. 6th rounder, Michael Onyenwu. He just felt like, you could put him in the handful of guys as, same thing I said with Jefferson, as one of the best rookies in the NFL last season. I thought he was terrific for this team. He played across the offensive line, and where we lost a couple of guys in Shaq Mason and Marcus Cannon, he kind of just stepped in and was awesome last year. So one of the biggest guys in the NFL, and also just came up with some big plays for them on the offensive line. And he's going to be on that team for a number of years on a great contract value as a 6th rounder.
Yeah, it makes zero sense that Bill Belichick can just okay, I'm just going to take some 6th rounder and he's going to be like one of the best rookies of 2020. Like, how does that happen?
Yeah, I know. And everyone's saying Bill Belichick sucks at drafting, and then he gets this guy in the 6th round, and he's just awesome for them. Like I said, I think at one point he was their PFF's highest graded offensive lineman for one point in the year, and I think he was one of the highest graded rookies too. So he was just an awesome player for them.
Yeah, absolutely. He was great. Yes, Thomas Merkel in chat, also J.C. Jackson. That's a good one as well.
Yeah, I mean, he was really good. I think there were some Patriots fans who thought he was kind of underrated beforehand, and then he kind of just showed that he was awesome this year. And then, so I mean, no doubt about that. And Jonathan Jones also had a good year in that secondary too. So those two guys definitely are options as well.
What about Jarrett Stidham?
Jared Stidham and Brian Hoyer did not make the list.
Okay, did not go. They didn't quite make it. All right, final division, 4 teams left. Where are you going first?
Denver Broncos. I guess, all the hype was on a lot of these young playmakers on this team with Noah Fant in his second season, who had a good year. Who's the other guy? Obviously, Jerry Jeudy coming in for his rookie year. There was Cortland Sutton coming in. There was, the backfield with Melvin Gordon. I feel like I don't get it. Like, every time I watch Tim Patrick play, I was like, I would kill for this guy on the Patriots. I would literally cut off my left arm if I could get Tim Patrick on the Patriots.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I know. I don't care. Like, this guy is awesome. Every time I see him play for the Broncos, he looks awesome. And it's probably just because we haven't had a good receiver in like 3 years, so I just get jealous. But I don't get it. Every time it seems like he's the forgotten man in Denver, but every time I watch him play, he's awesome for this team.
I agree. He's that big receiver who can move. Also, really, I think selling your arm short. You're going to cut off your arm for Tim Patrick?
Listen, I hardly play any more sports, so what do I really need my left hand for?
I feel. Well, wait. So is it your hand or your arm?
Well, even the arm. Like, what am I using my left arm for? I can drive one-handed. I can write one-handed.
Well, okay, but what about, like, I don't know, eating a sandwich?
I can eat a sandwich one-handed. I'll make it work.
Well, why is the negotiation ending with Tim Patrick? Can you not get, like, I feel like you could get a better player perhaps, or maybe, like, I don't know, a Super Bowl out of it? I feel like you could get a Super Bowl for your arm.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah. Maybe I'm overreacting a little. Like I said, we haven't had a good receiver in a number of years, but Tim Patrick, I'm a fan of. I hope you're a free agent one day that will sign with the Patriots. So feel free to go over to Foxborough after this.
Oh my God, you love Tim Patrick. Now an invite to joining with the New England Patriots.
I told you, I'm a fan.
Yeah, he might be his number one fan. I like Tim Patrick, but I'm not going to cut my arm off for him.
I'm considering it. We'll see what happens.
Okay. Maybe so Tim Patrick tweets out, I will join the New England Patriots. I just need a fan to cut off their arm. You're saying done.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, let's hope it doesn't come to that. That'd be very, very bizarre for Tim Patrick to do. But yeah, no, he is a very good player. Realistically, over 700 yards, 6 touchdowns. I agree. He's one of the many weapons that they have in that room. All right, where are you going next?
All right, so we'll go to the Chargers here. I mean, this was the one rookie like I kind of tried to avoid. I actually have back-to-back rookies here. This was one I tried to avoid, but at the same time, like, no one expected him to really be this good this fast. Justin Herbert was awesome, right? I mean, there's really not a whole lot you can pick besides this. He was really good for this team, and in year one, no one expected 31 touchdowns and 10 interceptions. It's got to be Herbert for me.
Yeah, I mean, it is. I mean, we were both very low on him. A lot of people were low on him. I think there's more people that thought that the Chargers were idiots than anything else for drafting him. And then he goes out and has one of the best rookie seasons that we've seen in quite some time, wins Offensive Rookie of the Year. That's definitely a pleasant surprise. Yeah,
their team doctor was number 2 for me, but Justin Herbert was definitely number 1. Backing up that team doctor's thought of getting him on the field as soon as he could.
Yeah, an incredible move to figure out what you have to do. Let's move on. 2 teams left, Chiefs and Raiders. Are you going to go with Chiefs again and save the Raiders for last again?
Yeah, of course. So we'll go with the Chiefs here. Like I said, I tried to avoid it, but I should just stop saying it because I clearly didn't try to avoid it. L'Jarius Sneed here was my pleasant surprise. I mean, I thought he was really good. And in a year where the Chiefs were missing both corners to start the season, Sneed came in and got that interception week 1. He graded out really well, and I thought he was really impressive in his first season. I think he's only going to get better. This is a tough position to come in and look impressive at right away. And as a 4th-round pick coming in and, stepping into a starting role basically immediately, I thought it was really good.
Yeah, I agree. He had like a great interception against, I believe it was against Herbert, the last guy we just talked about, where he kind of, makes a great read. He's already like a smart player, which, and, as a rookie corner, typically those guys don't tend to do too well. So, that's another position where it often takes a year, but not always. And sometimes you jump in and are good right away. He jumped in and was good right away. Yeah,
no doubt. I thought he was awesome. And he was really good for them. And, Brashad Breeland leaves because, I think they feel comfortable with him stepping in.
Yeah. All right. Let's get to the Raiders. Sure, the Raiders fans very upset. Where are you going here?
Why are they upset? I'm saving the best for last. And you know what? I'm
There
going to
you
give him two because I didn't want to pick a guy who left the team.
go.
But
Okay.
Nelson Aguilar was really good for them in his first year with the team. Has his best year to date. I thought he was really good. And the other guy I had was a guy still on the team and, was able to get re-signed. I talked about Corey Littleton last week as the biggest disappointment, struggling as a cover linebacker. Their coverage at linebacker, though, really wasn't bad because a guy like Nicholas Morrow was able to step up and have a really good year for them. So I had Nicholas Morrow and Nelson Aguilar as my two guys.
Interesting. Yeah. I get that. I was even sort of thinking about the Raiders because, again, typically like the guys who were good, we kind of already knew were good, and there were some disappointments. The only other thing I could think of is maybe you could say Derek Carr, just because like he had a better year than he typically does. But we already knew he was good. I mean, there were some talking heads who said they should get rid of him, but for the most part, most people knew he was good.
There still are talking heads. They should trade him for Aaron Rodgers, right? I mean, he was really good too.
There's a big difference in saying you should trade him for Aaron Rodgers and you should trade him for a box of peanuts, and then I don't think they sell peanuts in boxes, but a bag of peanuts, and then go from there.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I mean, I thought he just had a really good year overall. But yeah, Morrow and Aguilar were impressive to me, and guys who were kind of under the radar. I mean, they basically got Aguilar for free, right?
I mean, yeah, and you could also go with Nick Kwiatkowski as well, another linebacker in the mix. Which I mean, I guess he met expectations, but for the Raiders, that's pretty good. For Raiders defense, meeting expectations in a Paul Gunther defense, like that's pretty impressive.
No, I mean, I thought he was really good. I was a fan of his. I was a fan of his before they signed him, and I think the big thing was he was a guy they gave money, and he kind of lived up to that, like you said. So he was really good. I thought Morrow was good, and like I said, I thought Aguilar was very good. I almost picked Hunter Renfrow, but I ended up looking at his numbers, and it's like his numbers were actually pretty similar to his year before. I think people were just paying more attention to him, and he was pretty good still. And then another guy was Darren Waller, was another one I thought about, who kind of vaulted himself into that elite tight end category. Bless you.
Thank you.
Where I thought Waller, like I said, the only thing that really changed for his numbers, though, was his touchdowns. Touchdowns went way up, obviously. But obviously, he put himself in that elite tight end category.
Well, they had a certain quarterback whose passer rating went up over 40 points. Nathan Peterman, 3 for 5, no turnovers. I mean, that's pretty great.
The no turnovers and 5 passes, that's got to be like his career high.
Yeah, that's up from 2017 when his interception percentage was 10% of throws was an interception. that was
spit out my drink. That was really funny.
a rough year for the Peterman.
Yeah, I mean, his career has been a rough career, so glad to see him turning around though.
So far.
Yeah,
getting back on track with that passer rating of 72.9. Those are practically Sam Darnold numbers. I mean, he's the Panthers maybe will sign him next.
He's on his way, man.
Yeah. All right. So, pleasant surprise for every team. That's our list. So next week we are going to be doing the division. What way do you want to do this? What way do you want to do the division things? You want to start with the AFC and then do the NFC and finish with Tampa Bay? Last year we finished with our teams at the end of each conference. Do you want to do that again?
Yeah, that's fair. Should we just not bury the lead and put the AFC North first? Like, I feel like that's easily the most interesting division to talk about, right?
Yeah, we can do that. Yeah, I don't have a problem with that. Sure, we'll do that.
All right, AFC North next week. Get ready. Don't worry, we'll try and go through the NFC East as fast as possible when that week comes up.
Yeah, that's going to be we'll make it a 6-minute long podcast.
And we'll try and talk about the Chargers more for 25 seconds this year. I think someone complained that we didn't talk about the Chargers enough last year, so we'll make sure we talk about them.
Yeah, I think I remember we did something where we did over-unders and we talked about them for 8 seconds and I'm like, oh, whatever, let's move on. We got nothing to say.
Yeah. So, but yeah, no, I think the AFC North will definitely be interesting, and we'll talk about that next week. Where are we going to do it the same? I guess we'll just talk about it on air, where I rank the teams in the division and then you go by position. Yeah,
let's do it same way we did last year, and I have a bit of a different thing. So I can set this up a little bit now. I'll set it up at the beginning of the next show as well. But I'm going to do, I created this whole video where I had this format of how valuable each position grouping is, using how, like, statistically how well that tends to impact an offense or defense. And so I'm going to be using that as kind of a weighted scale to talk about. I ranked every single team, and then I have the weighted scale to determine where these teams are going to end up in terms of how much wins I expect them to get. So it's a bit more complex. 2021, the year of analytic Jackson. So that's the way I'm going to be doing this. But I think that it'll be a bit more complex than just last year, where I kind of said, that feels like an 8. I take this one a bit more seriously.
All right. Jackson's having a hot boy analytics summer. We're ready to get into it. And so I'll be ranking each team in the division. So feel free to send any complaints my way on Twitter @byKyleGrondin. I'll take any and all complaints.
Yes. And for my complaints about me, you can just find me on Twitter. It's hot boy analytics summer. Just type in that and that's where you go. Excellent. Can't wait for it. Yes. All right. Thanks to everyone for watching. We appreciate it. Hope to see you next week. And until then, what's my sign? I did the wrong sign off last time. It's until then, have a good one, right? Yes. Okay. And until next time, have a good one. Peace.